Welcome back to another episode of STEM in Stilettos. This is your host, Sophia Morales, and today we are going to discuss making work fair, the science behind inclusive and innovative STEM workplaces. So if you have ever spent part of your career, or maybe you're currently in a situation where, you know what, something doesn't feel right in what's going on in my workplace, or I'd like to see the dynamics in my team shift around something that's happening in the workplace, you've arrived at the right place today. So, Dr. Siri is a senior researcher at the Women and Public Policy program at Harvard Kennedy School and an internationally recognized expert in advancing women and promoting gender equality in organizations. As an academic researcher, Siri specializes in identifying practical approaches to close gender gaps at work by debiasing structures and designing fairer processes. As an advisor and speaker, she collaborates with organizations including startups, large multinational companies, top professional services firms, governments, nonprofits, and academic institutions to further advance gender equality through evidence-based insights. Siri's work regularly appears in leading media outlets, and she has spoken on gender equality at hundreds of large events around the world. Siri is the co-author with Iris Bonet of Make Work Fair, Data-Driven Design for Real Results, published by HarperCollins this year. She has an MBA from Harvard Business School, a master's in public policy from Harvard Kennedy School, and a BA in chemistry and physics from Harvard College. Welcome to the show, Siri. I'm so happy to have you here with me.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm thrilled to be here with you, and I'm so looking forward to this discussion today.
Oh my goodness, me too. So tell us a little bit about how you went from chemistry and physics, which we have in common,
Dude.
to more of like a social sciences spin on the world. What was that journey like?
Yeah, that was a bit of an unexpected twist there in the road. I grew up always as a science geek, math, chemistry, physics, all the way. So, any listeners who are in STEM, I totally relate. I am a STEM geek at heart. And all the way through college, in fact, my first job was in management consulting. I had heard that it was a great place to learn a lot of skills that are very valuable for life and career, which I would wholeheartedly agree with, by the way. But that was also my first job out of college, my first introduction to real gender inequality in the world and at work.
Oh,
It's not to say that, of course, there's manifestations of gender inequality starting from the playground when we're young kids. But at least in my experience, my family, my schools, my educational institutions had done a pretty good job of insulating me from the kind of most egregious examples of gender inequality at
yeah.
play. But as soon as I entered the workplace, it just all hit me in the face.
Oh
Things
my
like,
goodness. Yeah, tell me the
50-50,
story on
all
that.
the juicy details. At my company, we were 50-50 at the entry level, but as I look up to the partnership, the most senior levels, it's 90% men, 10% women.
Yeah.
I was promoted ahead of schedule, which was used as an excuse to underpay me drastically in
Oh,
comparison to my
interesting.
colleagues.
Tell me how they justified that.
Well, basically, for each rank, there was like a salary band. So when you
Right.
first start as an analyst, you start at the bottom of the rank. The expectation was that you'd maybe be an analyst for 2 years,
Yeah,
during which time your pay would increase within that band.
sure.
And then when you got promoted to the next rank, you'd again start at the bottom of that band. And what happened to me, because I was promoted faster than the usual cadence, is that my pay hadn't had a chance to rise up to the top of that band before I got shifted into the next band. And they had an arbitrary rule, so I was told, about how much a person's salary could be raised percentage wise at a given time.
Yes,
So we
I
can't
ran
increase your
into that
salary for more
myself.
than
Yeah.
11%, whatever, which is totally arbitrary because, in my opinion, your pay should be based on the job that you're doing and the skills that you
Exactly.
have and the value that you're actually delivering. So if you're in a given role and you've been deemed to be competent to do that role, then you should be paid for that role.
Yeah.
And the other thing I observed is I had a chance to work with all these wonderful colleagues and female colleagues who I thought were truly outstanding based on my personal experience working with them. Were not getting promoted as fast as men that I had also had a chance to work with who I thought were solid, mediocre, but not the star performance. And you start
Yeah.
looking around, you're like, Why is that? And then other people start grumbling about the same, and you go, oh, I'm not alone in these observations. I wonder what's going on
Mm.
here. So that was really what lit the fire underneath me to want to actually make advancing gender equality my life's work, one way or
Yes.
another. And this is more than, we're going back 10, 15 years. So the world was a very different place. DEI as an acronym didn't exist. Chief
Hmm.
Diversity Officer roles didn't exist,
You'd
nor did
never heard of that. Yeah,
team.
exactly.
So I just want to remind everybody this is a very, very different context we're talking about. But I was exploring different roles and different ways of making a difference in this space. And I actually kind of discovered academia by accident. I had the opportunity when graduating from graduate school to work on a year-long research project with Kathleen McGinn, a professor at Harvard Business School, whose work I had long admired and been familiar with. So without thinking, when that opportunity came up and said, yes, whatever it is that I get to do with Kathleen, I'll do it. It'll be interesting. I'll learn a lot. Who knows where it'll lead? And in short, it led to this incredible career at the intersection of social science research, but also translating that research to practitioners. So I'm very passionate not just about generating knowledge, but making sure that the knowledge lands in the hands of people like you, Sophia, like everybody who's listening today, who's on the front lines of organizations who can actually use that knowledge to make a difference.
Exactly, exactly, because it doesn't do us any good in the ivy tower. And
Exactly.
I have to say, I ran into that similar circumstance in my early corporate job, and I didn't manage to resolve it until I actually was hiring people who reported to me
Mm,
that were
yeah,
making more coming in than I was after having been there for like 4.5 years. And
right.
when they approached me to take that position, I said, look, here's the situation. You need to fix this,
Yep.
or I don't take it. And
Yep.
it was because they wanted me, I was finally in that position to be able to put down my foot and really have some negotiating power behind
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, yeah, time out, people. This is just wrong. I'm not going to manage people who are making 30% more than I am. It's
Exactly.
not
And
happening.
this is actually a very common story where women don't discover that they're underpaid until they become managers and get
Hmm.
access to see other people's compensation. And
Yes.
then the floodgates open because you go, whoa, how is this possible? And there's stories of companies where people have started anonymous spreadsheets where they're posting their own and their team's compensation, and people start crowdsourcing from the bottom up
Yes.
when there's no top down transparency about we're actually paying people fairly. Here's the process. Here's the adjustments that we're making. Sunlight really is the best of disinfectants, as they say.
Yes, it really is. It really is. And I don't know about some of my other peers in the organization at that time, but I knew what was happening within my team. And it's like, yeah, this is no, no, unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about. I kind of want to swing into your book, Make Work Fair,
Mm,
because I think there are a lot of us out there having the lived experience of it doesn't feel quite right. It doesn't feel quite equitable. Some of the logic that I'm being given for why I'm not making an appropriate amount of money doesn't feel quite right. So, talk to us a little bit about what are some effective, like real world evidence based strategy, not some like LinkedIn
mm.
rumor that you
Yes,
can
yes.
use to work your way through the system that has a number of biases built into it, some of which are larger at some companies than others?
Yeah. So let me back up to the concept of
Sure.
fairness first, because I want us to be on the same page about that.
Yeah.
So imagine that you're standing on the starting line of the 100-meter dash at the Olympics, and you're
Yeah.
lined up against these competitors. You're all wearing the same sneakers. You've got the same outfits. You know that at 100 meters, there will be that finish line, and whoever crosses it first is going to be deemed the winner.
Yes.
Now imagine that someone comes up to you, the race official, and says, please take your shoes off. You're going to be racing barefoot today, whereas everybody else gets to keep their shoes on. Or imagine that the race official moves you to the grassy area next to the high performance speed track and says, you're going to run on the grass. These other seven people get to run on the track today. Or just by way of one more example, which is actually maybe the one that's closest to the real world, imagine if the race official comes to you and pulls you back 20 meters so that
Mm.
you have to run 120 meters instead of 100 meters. In all of those cases, you're obviously going to cross the finish line last and you're going to
Yes.
appear slower.
Can I
Not because you,
can I
yeah,
throw an example in there? Or the race
yeah, of
official comes
course.
over to you and says, "Here, put on this backpack of extra stuff that the other people might need at the finish line."
Yeah, yeah. I
Because
love that.
that happens to women a lot. It's like, yeah, you've got your job description, but you know what? We need somebody to organize this social thing over here, recognize some birthdays over there, and you end up with a bunch of unpaid work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful example. I'm going to add that to my analogy next time. So you're going to finish the race last, but not because you're a slower sprinter, because you didn't encounter the same playing field, right? You weren't given a
Yes.
fair opportunity to actually show how fast you can run, to show what your skills and talents are. So when my co-author Iris and I talk about fairness, what we're really talking about in a fair workplace is one where everyone gets to start at the same starting line with the
Yes.
same equipment, shoes, whatever. And then you finish at the same finish line, and in between, you encounter the same environment with equal resources and support. So, that work allocation example that you just gave of people giving different types of work, some people are asked to do more social things than others. That's a great example of how the playing field is very stacked against women in the real world. Research shows that in every organization, you have the so called promotable work. That's
Hmm.
the high visibility projects, the important assignments that if you do well, you're going to get rewarded and promoted accordingly. And then there's also the so called non promotable work. That's really important for the organization's functioning, but as an individual, it doesn't help you advance your career. So
Yes.
it could be mentoring junior colleagues, running the summer internship program, booking the meeting room, taking the meeting notes, ordering the birthday cake for a colleague, right? These are
Yes.
all wonderful things we want to happen. But if you as an individual spend time doing them, that's time away from being on the client projects, going to present at the conference, doing the analysis, sitting in the meeting where you get FaceTime with a senior leader. And research shows that women are both asked to do more of this non promotable work, they do more non promotable work, and it in fact directly leads to them being less likely to be promoted. Because in the
Yeah.
meantime, men are doing more of the promotable work. So that's an
Exactly.
example of how the workplace is unfair. And you're right, there are a lot of rigorously researched and evidence-based solutions to kind of show us exactly how we can level the playing field.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, most of those solutions have a common thread, which is that it's the system that needs to be fixed, not the individuals.
Yes.
Right? So this is not
Exactly.
about going up to the sprinters and saying, move your arms a little bit differently and bounce a little bit more when you run and
Yeah.
breathe differently. It's
Exactly.
about saying,
Lean a
wait a
little
second.
bit farther forward to support that backpack.
Exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
but wait a second, if you're starting 20 meters behind, the real solution here is just to bring you to the same starting line or to give you those sneakers or to take off the backpack and then let's let you run as fast as you can.
Yeah. Let's
I,
talk about the backpack for a minute because I think
yeah.
this happens to a lot of us. And there's a reason it like keeps coming back to us, right? Have you ever
Mm,
been in a group where it's like, okay, we'll take turns doing the notes, but it never plays out that way? And
yeah.
I remember when we were doing our conversation before we set up this particular interview, you
Yeah.
had mentioned strategic incompetency, I think is the term that you put
Mm.
out there. And you describe strategic incompetency for the listeners. I'm sure they will recognize it.
Yes, this is one of those approaches that people of all genders use to get out of doing things that they don't want to do. But there's a particular gender angle at work in this, which is we'll say, oh, I'd love to take the notes, but you're just so much better at it. I mean, I've seen your notes, they're just incredible. Or I'd love to order the birthday cake, but you know, I get so frazzled, I can't keep track of these things. It's probably better because you're so organized that you take care of this.
Right.
By the way, this happens not just at work, but also at home. My colleague Allison Daminger actually wrote a great book called What's on Her Mind about the mental load and how couples share it at home. And this happens at home as well. Men who will be in professions like as a surgeon where they have to be incredibly detail oriented and focused, will not do anything at home and say, oh, my wife is just better at these things because she's so detail oriented and focused.
It's like,
You look at that and go, there's
mm,
a bit of a logical gap here because you use these skills every day in your work. You clearly have them. So that strategic incompetence is when we claim to be incompetent so as to get out of doing something that we don't want to
right.
do.
And I've even seen it taken a step farther than just saying it. It's like, yeah, no, here's your opportunity to practice. And then they deliberately whiff it. And now there's this social pressure from the rest of the group to put it back to the person who delivered on it really well.
That's right. That's right. And going back to my point about how really the fix is to fix the system, whoever is in the position of assigning those tasks, whether it's a team leader or a manager or the meeting convener, maybe it
Yes.
doesn't have to be the most senior person in the room, but the person who convenes the meeting and chooses who takes the notes and who makes the room reservation. It's really those people's job to make sure that tasks are evenly divided and that one person doesn't get overly burdened. But of course, we know that this doesn't always happen. And people who are in those positions of responsibility and accountability don't take it. So then there's the very real question of, while the playing field is unlevel today, how do we navigate it?
I
How
love
can we
that.
help ourselves while we wait for the system to change, while we wait for the playing field to level?
I love that. And I want to dig into more of that like really soon, but we are up on our first break. I do like to give a little bit of thought exercise over the break. And I think what I'm going to suggest is grab your pen, grab your piece of paper, and spend a couple of minutes around what is the non-promotable work that is currently on your plate at this time? Are you the birthday cake orderer? Are you wrangling the interns? What is that work that you're doing that is maybe acting as a backpack in your sprint? And just notice that. Hang with us, and we'll be right back to tell you what to do about it.
Oh, check it out, the wolf here. Tech is ours and we show no fear. No fear. No fear. No fear.
Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Sophia Morales, and I am back with this wonderful and amazing Siri Chilazi. And so over the break, we took an inventory of what's in our backpack. What are the non-promotable things that we're doing? And we also mentioned that the system doesn't respond immediately. So what do we do in the meantime?
Mm-hmm. So there's two pieces to the solution, right? Which is, on the one hand, you want to maximize your time on promotable tasks, meeting the right people, developing the skills that will get you noticed, that will get you promoted, that will make you ready for the next big job. So that's part one. Part two is you want to simultaneously minimize the amount of time that you're spending on tasks that are non-promotable. Now, I'll say a quick thing here, because sometimes people say, I'm involved with the Women's Network and I spend a lot of time on it. And yes, it's non-promotable work. I realize that, but I just love it and it fills my cup and I'm so excited to go to these meetings. So, of course, there's a layer here of,
Yeah.
you want to do work that and activities and things that also just delight you and that you
Yes.
enjoy, separate from whether they actually help to advance your career. So, as
Exactly.
part of identifying the tasks that you're currently engaged in, how do you spend your time? Is it promotable? Is it non-promotable? By all means, add an overlay of, here's the things that I
Do
actually
I like
enjoy.
it? Yes.
Yep. And even if nobody paid me, even if it doesn't help me climb up the ladder, I might still want to do this for my own enjoyment. That is absolutely fine. But let's put that now off to the side and focus the piece of this puzzle on the piece of this puzzle that is what's actually going to help you advance.
Yeah, exactly.
We
And I think the other thing is to be a little real, right? There's always a certain percentage of non-promotable work that has to happen in an organization. What you're looking to do is not drive yours to zero, but drive yours to a manageable level where you're carrying
Yes.
your share of the load, you're not carrying everyone else's.
Absolutely. And ideally, where your share of the load, even if it doesn't give you promotability, gives you something else. Maybe it
Exactly.
gives you enjoyment. Maybe it allows you to spend time with those colleagues that you enjoy the most, right? Or
Or the
something else.
interns that just bring new life and vigor into the organization or whatever it is. Yeah. Keep
Exactly.
the internship program and maybe pitch the tracking of some other thing, right?
Exactly. So my colleague Lise Westerlund, who is one of the co-authors of a book that I, by the way, highly recommend called The No Club, about how to
Yes.
start saying
There,
no to
I,
non-promotable work.
is that the same author as the non-promo? Is she the one that came up with the non-promotable work, or is she?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I
Yes,
thought.
Lise Westerlund and her
Yes,
colleagues came up with the concept. So she shared with me a lot of really useful concrete strategies for how we can start to rebalance our plate. Whether
yes,
it's someone asking you to do more new non-promotable activities, or whether it's you trying to offload some activities that you're already doing.
yeah, which is where you're probably going to get even more pushback.
Right. Exactly. So, one of the strategies is a so called strategic no, which is instead of just, especially early on in our careers, we want to come across as team players, we want to be enthusiastic about learning. We don't just, when a senior person comes and asks, could you do XYZ, you want to say, no, no, thanks, can't do it. So, the strategic no is a way to make clear the trade offs that saying yes would entail.
Yes.
So it would be something like saying, yes, if I did this, it would mean I couldn't do X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
I've been told that this project is very important for the company. If you now want me to do this other thing instead, I'll have to devote less time to what was deemed a higher business priority. Another strategy is to negotiate the yes, to say, okay, I could do this, but could I do it for the next 3 months and then we agree to turn it over to somebody else? Or could I do this with another person? Or if it's not time sensitive, could I do it but next month? Because this
Yes.
month I'm working on a big deadline that's a priority here. So instead of just saying yes straight up, always finding ways to negotiate the conditions around the yes. Or maybe it's a
Yes.
yes and you say, yes, I'm going to do this non promotable task you're asking me to do, but could you also send me to represent the company at that conference? Could I come with you to that meeting? Could you put me also on this other project that is really promotable that I've been wanting to do? Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes the way to get the big flashy thing that we want goes through the territory of
The
non promotable work.
non-promotables. Yeah. I love that
Exactly.
advice because that is one thing that I happened on early because being a highly competent person, you're the first one that comes to mind, right? They're like, oh,
Of
well,
course.
she'll get it done. Let's ask her. And at some point, you become overtasked. And so I learned early on that that was my negotiating moment. If I wanted more hands in my division, if I wanted to offload a project or whatever it was, that was my moment to say, all right, let's discuss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned that in my first job too. I tend to work pretty fast. I always have. And so I would finish tasks ahead of schedule and then go up to my managers and say, okay, what's next? What's next? I have capacity. If you need me to do
Yeah. What else
anything,
you
give me
got?
stuff. And then I started looking around and realizing I was doing so much more work than other people who were working a little bit slower. When they were asked, how long do you estimate this will take, would maybe pad the estimate a little bit and buy themselves more breathing room. And so a
Yes.
colleague of mine said, Siri, if you just keep asking for more assignments, like they will never stop. They will keep giving you more and more work. And the more they realize you can do, the more
The
they'll give
more,
you.
and the more they'll
So
expect from you. And so if you ever have a moment where you have to idle back to like
exactly,
the same level someone else is producing, they're like, your performance is flagging. No, my
exactly. Even
performance
though
is
now
just
you're being judged
on
on a totally
par.
different
Yeah,
standard. Yep.
exactly.
Yeah. So that's also just something to consider is the perception management piece of this, because as we all know, in a truly meritocratic system, we should be judged on what we actually do and our skills and our output. But that's not the world we live in. In addition to our skills and our output, we absolutely do get judged on other things like how people perceive our output, how people
Yes.
perceive our style, even our way of generating the output. And so those are things that, for better or worse, we have to manage. We have to be strategic and clear headed about.
I love that. So let's talk about some of the other advantages and disadvantages that kind of come built into the system. I know a lot of women struggle to find mentors and sponsors within
Mm.
organizations. Talk to us a little bit about how that plays out. How do you end up in these situations where it's like, I'd really like a mentor, but no one's offered to be my mentor?
Yeah. And just to level set real quick on the difference
Yeah,
between mentorship and sponsorship, the
let's
way
do
I
that.
define those is a mentor is anyone inside your organization or outside at your level or above your level who offers you support, advice, is a listening ear, gives you guidance. A sponsor is someone very specifically who's typically senior to you, typically in your organization, who can use their networks, their political and social capital to advocate for you in rooms where you're not present.
Hmm.
So it's the senior leader who says, yes, let's give this project to Sophia. I know she's ready. When someone says, I don't know, is Sophia ready? I know James has already done a project like this. He might be a safer pair of hands. Or
Hmm.
the senior leader who says, I want Sophia to come work on my team for this big deliverable that we're going to do, right? So someone who's channeling really concrete advancement opportunities your way. Mentors and sponsors are both really important. In some ways, sponsors are even more consequential because
Yes.
they can give you tangible opportunities instead of just advice.
Yeah, exactly.
And
They can literally shunt those opportunities your direction.
exactly. And what we see in the research very consistently is that we tend to, as humans, want to mentor and sponsor individuals who are similar to us. Naturally, we have
Yes.
this affinity toward people who are similar.
We see
And
that in the investing world as well. You
oh my
tend to want
gosh,
to put your
everywhere.
money with people who remind you of yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. And because leadership ranks across sectors, but especially in STEM, are still male dominated, men, younger men in those organizations tend to naturally get more of that informal mentorship and sponsorship without even asking for it necessarily,
Yes.
and certainly in the absence of a formal program. Whereas women who have many fewer role models and many fewer similar others to gravitate toward tend to be at a disadvantage. So again, this would be the real solution to leveling the playing field will be the organization ensuring that everyone gets equal access to both mentorship and sponsorship. But in the meantime, there are things that we can all do as individuals to help cultivate those.
Yeah. Let's dig
And
into what we
one,
can do.
let me start with what not to do, if I
Okay.
may.
Yeah. Let's do that because sometimes just not doing the thing helps you more than doing anything.
Exactly. I would say the biggest no no is to walk up to someone you don't know and say, can you please be my mentor or my sponsor? Because why would I? This happens all
Yeah.
the time. I've been on the receiving end of this so many times. I don't know anything about you. I don't even know if you're good. I don't know if I like you. I don't know if I want to spend my precious time and social and political capital to help you out. Whereas if I've had the opportunity to actually work with someone, to see their skills in action, to learn to get to know them in the course of everyday work or some activities, and they've impressed me with their skills and capabilities, now you don't even need to ask because I'm going to want to advocate for you. There's also a self interest piece in me for this as a leader, right? I want good people on my teams. So if I know you're good, I want to put you on my team because that actually helps my performance.
Yeah.
If I need an alternate or a sub or a junior person to maybe take over sometimes, I'm going to cultivate someone who I think is really promising. So, my number one advice for cultivating mentors and sponsors is to try to find opportunities to work side by side with senior leaders, whether it's in the course of your formal role, an employee resource group, a network, organizing a holiday party for the company, organizing an offsite, right? Anything
Yes.
that allows you to
Leverage
work
that
with senior.
non-promotable work.
You can leverage it to build the relationships and to impress senior people with how organized, detail oriented, communicative, strategic, right? All of those things you are so that they can see you have those skills. and then go up to them and say, listen, could I schedule a 30-minute coffee chat with you? I'd love to talk about my trajectory at the company or what I need to do to jump to the next level, or I'm evaluating whether I see my long-term future here. I see you've been here for 15 years. I'd love to get your thoughts on how you navigated your career, those kinds of things, right? Now there's
Yeah.
a basis to have those conversations. And then that kind of sustained engagement over time is much more likely to lead that more senior person to become a sponsor and a mentor for you.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I did when I was in corporate was I made it a point to be exposed to leadership. And interestingly, the smoking balcony was one of these places where you could get exposed to senior leadership. We had a bunch of smokers. I don't
Yep.
smoke, but I learned stand upwind, not
Yep.
downwind.
Nice.
And people on the smoking balcony are just there to hang out and get to know people. Excuse me.
Yeah.
They're just there to hang out and get to know people. And so there's a good opportunity to build goodwill with someone without asking them for anything yet.
That's right.
And because I had that relationship, then when something came up, it was a much easier approach.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm all about asking for what you want. So by all means do. But I will say, as I reflect on my career, I've never asked anybody to be my mentor or sponsor formally. There's many people that I consider mentors and sponsors just by virtue of what they've actually done and how a relationship has actually unfolded. But the moments where I've later found out that someone was really sponsoring me behind the scenes, I didn't even know about it, let alone ask for it. They had done it because they had been impressed with the quality of my work and they saw an opportunity to advocate for me.
Yeah, exactly. I was mentored by a lot of people when I was in corporate, but I never asked them to be my mentor. I would ask them for 10 minutes, 15 minutes to discuss something with them and ask
Yeah.
for their advice on a project or whatever I was negotiating at the time, or insight on why is this coming out this way.
Yeah.
And people would give all kinds of wonderful advice and support and what have you without ever having to formally hand them the mentorship mantle, if you will.
That's right. But there is another adage about this. Herminia Ibarra is one of the leading scholars of mentorship and sponsorship at work. She's based at London Business School. And she always says women are over mentored and under sponsored. And I think part of that goes back to it is more comfortable to speak to people who are closer to your level, closer to your age, more kind of informal way and ask for advice. It's inherently a little bit less comfortable to try to form relationships across age gaps, across hierarchy gaps, across major seniority gaps. I know for myself, especially at the outset of my career, I was so nervous anytime a senior leader from our firm or one of our clients was in the room. Like it wasn't inherently comfortable. But those are the relationships that carry the most weight for your advancement. So my other piece of
Right.
advice would be if you're feeling that discomfort, not all of us do, but some of us do, push past that and try to get comfortable with kind of having both business related and social conversations with the people who are currently in power because they are the people who can do the most for you.
I think that's one of the things that helped me in corporate is that I tend to be a little oblivious to the organizational tree, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I would see people, talk to them, this kind of thing, and then find out down the road or inadvertently, oh, that was the boss's boss's boss. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
You know,
Exactly.
and so being a little organizationally clueless actually helped me, I think, in that regard.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's a great quality.
Organizationally clueless, yes. Cultivate that. Now, it can gig you as well. We are up on our second break already. What would you recommend as a thought exercise over this break?
Think of 2 or 3 people that you either don't have a relationship with yet, or maybe you've met them a few times in passing that could be potential sponsors for you. Write down their names and think about how might you find an opportunity to work or somehow interact with them in the context of work. So yes, of course, we can always invite anybody for coffee, and that's nice. But how might you find an opportunity to showcase your skills to them in action?
I love that. So use your pen and paper, grab those names, and hang with us. We'll be right back from the break.
Oh, shout aloud, but we're here. Tech is ours and we show no fear. No fear. No fear. No fear.
Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Sophia Morales. I'm back with the amazing and wonderful Siri Chilazi. And before the break, we put a couple of names down on a piece of paper that could be mentor slash sponsorship candidates for us. Let's take that to the next step. How do we start networking and recruiting sponsorship effectively so it feels natural, so it doesn't feel cheesy, and so we are in the right position when the moments arrive for the opportunities?
So, confession, I absolutely detest networking. I really
Me
do.
too. You are not
But
alone.
I know, but the thing is, I love people. I
Yeah.
love talking to people. I love reading interesting things. I love talking about interesting things. And so, for me, honestly, in case this is helpful to anybody else, the first unlock that allowed me to make progress here was to just ditch and let go of the whole concept of networking. I said, that's fine. I never need to go on a networking event. I never need to do networking,
Yes.
but I should be talking to people. I should be learning about the work that's happening in my space, in my area of interest. And I absolutely should be connecting with people with whom I can have interesting conversations, who can share advice, who can share knowledge about the industry that's valuable to me. And I know
Yes.
this sounds just purely semantic, but at least for me, it was actually a more fundamental reframing in my mind when I changed the language.
Yeah, no, I'm going to plus one that because I find just networking on its own is like, no, I have to have a reason to be
Yeah,
broaching the conversation. And
yeah,
so, what I have done and what I did when I was corporate and do now, even in my career, is I have a project that drives the conversation a
yeah,
lot of times. And that's what I focus on, not the I need to network, but I'm guesting for the landing guests for this next season. Let me do some outreach to some interesting people who I'd have fabulous conversations with.
yeah.
I don't ever use the N word in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I just keep it around the project. It's like, okay, and I'm doing wonderful and important work with the podcast. And so I'm going to do that. And that's how we met, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you hit on something else too, which was very helpful for me is, of course, sometimes our networking is person driven,
Hmm.
meaning we identify a person, say, oh, I want to talk to this person. Now let me try to come up with an unforced and natural sounding way to approach them. And guess what? If it's not natural and if it is forced, it's going to be very hard to make it seem not that way, right? So sometimes a more natural way can actually be where it starts not with the person, but with the topic. Maybe you read
Yes.
an article on Harvard Business Review about something. Look up the authors, connect with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I read your recent Harvard Business Review piece. I thought this insight was fascinating. I'm trying to learn more about the space. Could we connect for a 15-minute chat? Or you saw someone speaking on a panel at a conference, right? Or even internally at a company. Maybe someone spoke at an all hands meeting and they're from a different division or function, so you otherwise haven't connected with them. Sometimes it helps to have an organic reason where you've come across their work, their thinking, their speaking, and then use that as a starting point.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And it doesn't hurt to lean into the functionality, trying to make it seem like something that a lot of times is not productive. And in
yeah,
fact, my husband has a sales trainer that he follows, and this guy, when he does his cold outreach, like leans right into that. It's like, yes, this is a cold email. I know you
yeah,
hate these, you know, and it
yeah,
just gets that garbage out of the way. He keeps it tight to the point. If this is not for you, flush it.
yeah.
And he gets a really good response rate to that because he's not pretending like, oh, I'm following all your stuff and I think you're amazing. I get dozens of these kinds of DMs, and a lot of
Yeah.
times it's pretty clear they haven't followed my stuff from what they
Yes,
have to say.
that's it. That comes across Always. And
Yeah.
now, especially in the age of AI, where just content is proliferating and you can have AI write these vapid emails. Trust me, your
Yeah.
recipients can tell if it was an AI generated email and you don't actually follow their work. I would also invite people to just think twice about why they want to connect with someone. Sometimes we
Yes.
just feel like, oh, I should be forming a relationship with this person. But why? Do you want to learn some of the knowledge that they have? Do you need them to do a favor for you? Do you want to ask if they have an open position in their company? Like, what is the actual root reason that you're trying to reach this person? Because when that's clear for you, then coming up with something to say, and if they say yes to your connection request and you actually have a 15 or 30-minute coffee chat, it won't be hard to come up with
Yeah.
questions to ask and things to say because it's coming from an actual place of curiosity.
Yeah, exactly. And it's completely legitimate to want to get to know somebody because you admire them or
Yes.
because you've watched their career trajectory and you'd like that same thing for yourself. I think that's a
Yeah,
perfectly legitimate reason to reach out. And there's a compliment built right in there. I
that's right.
admire what you've done.
That's right. And the most powerful thing of all, though, we've kind of talked about networking as if we're trying to reach out to someone that we don't have any kind of connection into, like that
Right.
cold outreach. With all of that said, relationships are everything in life
Yes.
and
Yes.
in work.
And it doesn't stop with that contact. If you just connect and you don't take it beyond that, you really haven't built
Exactly.
anything.
Exactly. So, my first piece of advice, actually, even before doing all the cold outreach, would be to talk to the people who are already in your network, the people that you already know, and share with them what it is that you're looking for. I'm looking to switch jobs. I need to get an internship. I'm looking for this advice on this specific dilemma, and here's the dilemma. And then ask your friends and contacts. Now that I've explained this to you, do you have someone in mind that you could introduce me to? Do you know someone in your network
Right.
who you think could be a valuable resource for me in this regard? Or
Yes.
even if you read
The
somebody,
Kevin Bacon game. I love this
yeah, yeah, exactly.
because you don't know who people know. And a lot of times the resources you need are closer than you think they are.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
people are much less likely to turn down an email or request when it comes from someone that they know,
Yeah. Because
you
you've
know?
built up a bank of trust with that person. They know who you
Exactly.
are. They know who they're referring. They have confidence in who you are and what you can deliver, or not
Exactly.
confidence. And hopefully they would tell you to your face if it was no confidence.
That's right. That's right. But I will say every single one of my jobs ever, I've actually gotten through relationships. I talked with someone and then they connected me with someone and they connected me with someone else. And lo and behold, the next step was the hiring manager or something like that.
Yeah.
So never, even though companies have formal processes, again, going back to the age of AI, organizations, for example, for open roles are seeing more applications than ever because it's so easy to quickly ask AI to generate a resume or an
Oh,
application for
oh
you.
my heavens. Which brings me around to something that I wanted to bring up, which isn't gender based, it's actually age
Mm,
based, because
mm,
I'm like headed into that stage of life and my husband has run up against this. And that a lot of times when you go through that front door of hiring, it goes through the AI and into HR and all the things. There seems to be, in our experience, a subtle ageism thing that's
mm,
happening
yeah,
where the resume gets weeded out and shunted to the side, and no one's going to say, oh, it's because they're too old. They put other excuses around it, but it comes back to they're older than we want, not really the excuses that are given. So, what are your words of advice around people who are
yeah.
arriving in those kind of spaces?
Yeah, the evidence is there that this is a very real phenomenon. Ageism is real in the workplace. And of course, it's illegal. Discrimination based on age is not legal, but
Which
it
is
does
why they
happen.
don't say that. They just use other
Yep.
reasons. Yep.
Yeah. So the systemic fix would be for employers to make sure that their evaluation procedures are actually objective and unbiased so that they're not unintentionally or intentionally discriminating against older candidates. What's something that you can do yourself? There was a wonderful study done in the UK that showed that reformatting your resume can be very effective. So the typical resume, right? We have our experience, then with specific dates attached. So
Hmm.
I was in college from 2006 to 2010, and
Right.
then I was a consultant from 2010 to 2013. So those dates make obvious your age because
Yes.
people can backtrack and count and
It's like,
judge it
okay,
from
you got your
college
degree when?
or high
Yes.
school. And interestingly, they also make very obvious career gaps. So if you ever took time off from continuous full-time paid work for any reason, let's say your past experience ended in 2024, now your next one starts in 2025, employers will look at that and say, what were you doing for a year? And empirically, we see around the world that employees do penalize applicants with non-continuous work histories, even though there's no evidence to suggest that people with career gaps are in any way less skilled.
Yeah,
So the
I
way to
think
get
it's
around
pretty stupid, but yeah, there it is.
Yeah, exactly. The way to get around this as an applicant is just reformat your resume so that you list your experiences with the amount of time rather than the specific dates attached. So college, 4 years, management consulting, 3 years, graduate school, 3 years, right? You don't lose any information that's actually relevant to assessing your skills and competence, which is what we should be focused on in a
Right.
meritocracy, people's skills
Exactly.
and competence and demonstrated capabilities. But you do obscure this issue of age and the issue of career gaps. So that would be one of my recommendations. And the other
I
one,
like that, and I think it needs to be paired with a higher signal, low noise channel of delivering that to a deciding person on the employer's
yes, say
side.
more about that.
Because what I've noticed is a lot of times you will find something that looks promising and they send you through a website, which is upload your resume. Great, we've reformatted it. There you go. But then it goes, fill in this form and the dates are frickin' required.
Yep.
You can't
Yep.
skip it. Yeah.
Yeah, that does happen. And so at that point, you're stuck. I mean, you have to put something in. The other thing I would really recommend is, and it's hard to do sometimes as an applicant, but frame your experience, whether it's on your resume, in a cover letter, or even as you're speaking to the employer in an interview, as much as possible around the skills, right? What is it that you can do? You can have 3 people who got a degree in computer science, a 4-year degree from college.
Sure.
That doesn't mean they're all equally good at coding, right?
Right.
You can have 2 people who were people managers for 10 years. One of them could be the best manager in the world, and the other could be the worst. So if there's any way in which you can focus on framing your experiences, not around, oh, I got this degree and I have these letters after my name and I did this for X number of years. Talk about what are all the things that you can actually do because you've done them already, because you have experience, because you had great results.
Yes.
Not just, oh, I coded for 5 years, but talk about some of the specific projects that you did. How did you solve problems? What was the output? That is going to be so much more compelling for an employer because at the end of the day, they have a problem to solve. They have a
Yes.
job that needs to get done, and they need someone with the exact matching skills to come and do it. So the more you can signal that you are ready on day one to hit the ground running and do all the things that this position requires, that just increases your compatibility with the employer.
I love that. So we're down to like our last 90 seconds here. Can you
Time pressure.
give a word of advice to a listener who might be feeling isolated right now? Maybe she's the only female engineer or the only board member who's a lady on the team.
Yeah.
What can she do to feel less isolated or actually be less isolated?
3 things. Number 1, find kinship outside of that setting. So if you're a woman, if you're the only woman on your team, find other spaces, right? Your neighborhood, women's groups, whatever, to connect with women. Number 2, in that space where you are the only, find other dimensions of connection with the people that you are with. So
Yes.
you might be the only woman, but maybe there's many other people who, like you, love board games, right? Connect around that. Or love, I don't know, pickleball or something. But
Yeah.
you get my point. Build kinship around other things so that the demographic loneliness matters less. And then part 3, make sure you're not the only going forward. Do whatever is in your power to cultivate the next generation. When there's an opening, propose another woman.
Yes, sponsor
mentor
another
and
woman.
sponsor other women, right? Ask your company, could you expand the size of your team, right? Many companies have increased the diversity on their boards by actually increasing the size of the board.
Oh, well, and
So there
here's
are
the other thing.
always ways to
Many
promote people in.
companies will actually reward you for referring employees into the
Yes.
company. And so take
Yes.
full advantage of those programs.
100%.
Yes,
Yep.
love it. Yay! So that's a wrap. It's been so amazing to have you here with me
Thank you.
today.
The
I
pleasure has been all mine, Sophia. Thanks for this wonderful conversation. Thank you,
wish we had another
listeners.
hour.
Me too.
Yes, and
We could
thank
definitely
you.
keep going for another hour and more.
Exactly. And thank you, listeners, for joining us here today. I always like to hear from you. Go ahead and drop a comment if you're watching us on YouTube right underneath the video, or if you're listening to us on podcast, you can email me to zofia@steminstilettos.com. I know Siri has her contact information below in the show notes, so if you would like to reach out to her to have a conversation, engage further with her work, that's available there.
Would
And
love to.
yes, and until next week, go out, be bold, be beautiful, and be authentically you.